One thing I'm noticing when I look at the future of work in conjunction with AI is that it looks to me like beginners' jobs are really in danger. And so this is something that you recently hear quite a bit on the news, but I've actually come to the conclusion that this is correct. Because I noticed that, let's take a software developer, for example, but this goes for a product manager just as well, or different jobs, is that the people who seem to profit most from using AI in a professional way, and I mean in a professional way, you can't just like occasionally tap something into Mistral or OpenAI and think you're going to get all the benefits. But if you use it in a professional way, I think you will most benefit from it if you're already somewhat experienced. So I would say 5 to 6 years at least in your domain. And then if you're also a little bit broader, in Scrum we call it T-shaped, meaning you're not just an expert in one thing, you're actually an expert in one thing, but maybe also on a middle level in some other adjacent fields, right? So for example, if you're an expert in back-end software development, but you also have some competencies in DevOps or some front-end systems, this is actually when you can really start to shine, because with the support, with the augmentation of AI, it'll be fairly easy to build front end for your backend, right? So if you don't really know what this means, backend is the logic, the hardcore computer code that does something. For example, if you book a flight on an airline's page, all the logic in the background, the payment, the reservation, all of that is the back end, right? This is something you don't really see. But then there's windows into that system. So that might be an iOS app or a website. These are the so-called front ends, and they're usually technically not as challenging. So if you're a back-end developer, and if you can build all the logic of payment systems of seat reservation, then you used to need to have somebody who's just as much as an expert to build the iOS app for your iPhone or the website. But with the help of AI, what you can actually do is you can focus on your strength, the back end, and you can do that better because you have an AI that supports you there in, for example, writing automatic tests and so on. But then you can also, with just a little bit of skill in building iOS apps for your iPhone, for example, you can use the AI's help to create pretty good experiences. So the people that are already strong, that are already diverse in their skill sets, they are going to get unbeatable, in my opinion. We'll see that people will get more and more powerful that are already good. But the people who are not as experienced, the freshers, right, the people just starting out, they will have a problem. And also the people that like to really just stick in their lane, the specialists, right, especially if they're not masters in their field. So I often encounter this with software developers. For example, they are decent Android developers, right? So they build apps for your Android phone. They're decent, but they don't want to do anything outside of that field. They don't want to know anything about building iPhone apps. They don't want to know anything about the logic in the background. They don't want to know anything about the infrastructure. And I think those people will have it very difficult, because the people that are actually broader, the people that actually have a little bit more experience, they'll become so powerful that the salaries are going to flow to them, the interesting projects will flow to them, and the people that are very restricted, they will actually have a hard time. And as for the juniors starting, I think this is going to become a big problem. So I think right now the juniors that are job hopping or trying to, like get a year or more here and there by switching jobs, I think they need to be really careful. The most important thing they can do is actually see the first couple of years working as some form of education, because they're not going to be super productive. The companies are actually still investing in them, paying them a salary, teaching them to how actually be a professional programmer in this case. And I think they need to be really careful not to be kicked out of the market, because if they don't get these first couple of years under their belt, they are going to have a hard time to be actually really productive compared to these new augmented super developers.